For thousands of years, this strait has been a place of conflict. Why?
Look at the 20 million barrels of crude oil navigating the ocean every single day. The primary hazard for this massive fleet is entirely invisible. Long before these ships enter the Persian Gulf, they have to navigate a highly sensitive financial gauntlet. The global shipping market does not wait for a missile strike or a sunken vessel. The mere anticipation of conflict triggers a chain reaction across the world's financial centers. The underwriters sitting in the historic boardrooms of Lloyd's of London act as the unseen judges for this logistical operation. Every commercial supertanker requires heavy insurance underwriting before it can legally move into territorial waters. The moment naval friction escalates between the United States and Iran, a bureaucratic trigger is pulled. The underwriters immediately reclassify the Strait of Hormuz as a listed area, a designation reserved for high-risk zones.
This instant reclassification turns geopolitical tension into a concrete financial penalty. Before a single shot is fired, market fear is weaponized, forcing the entire world to pay a premium for the resulting uncertainty. This penalty is known as the war risk premium. It is an extortionate toll activated the exact second a supertanker crosses into the listed choke point. Under normal conditions, maritime insurance is a standard operating cost, but under a war risk premium, the cost to insure a single voyage of a very large crude carrier surges by 1,000%, jumping from a few $1,000s to several $100,000 for one trip. Shipping fleets are immediately forced into a corner. Shipowners have to decide if they will pay millions in extra fees per voyage or boycott the Gulf completely, which instantly slashes the global supply of available oil. Neither the shipping companies nor the oil corporations absorb this massive penalty. The added cost of maritime risk is passed seamlessly down the supply chain, inflating the baseline price of raw crude long before it reaches a refinery. By the time that oil is processed into gasoline or plastics, the macroeconomic cost of the standoff has already been paid by the consumer at the pump. Producing nations in the Gulf have spent billions of dollars digging overland backdoors, attempting to circumvent the guarded vault of the strait entirely. Saudi Arabia built the East-West Pipeline, a transcontinental engineering project designed to pump crude from eastern fields directly across the desert to the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates constructed the Habshan-Fujairah pipeline. This strategic terrestrial corridor bypasses the inner Gulf and exits straight into the Gulf of Oman. These multi-billion-dollar pipelines are presented to global energy markets as geographic fail-safes, mechanical escape routes designed to liberate the economy from the Strait of Hormuz. This chart shows a side-by-side comparison of daily barrel volume capacities, revealing the severe physical limitations of pumping liquid overland under maximum pressure. When you push every active bypass pipeline in the Middle East to its absolute operational limit, they can transport a combined maximum of 6.5 to 7.5 million barrels per day. The daily requirement of the Strait of Hormuz exceeds 20 million barrels. That leaves a catastrophic, unbridgeable deficit of nearly 14 million barrels of oil every single day that have absolutely no alternate route. Furthermore, these overland pipelines possess zero capacity to transport liquefied natural gas. The massive volumes of Qatari LNG demanded by Europe must travel by sea on highly specialized carriers. The math is unforgiving. There is no digital, mechanical, or terrestrial escape hatch wide enough to replace the physical throat of Hormuz. The global economy remains entirely lashed to the water.
The maritime standoff between the United States and Iran in 2026 is a direct collision of two entirely incompatible economic doctrines. The United States operates on the doctrine of freedom of navigation. This strategy relies on projecting overwhelming naval force forward to reassure markets and keep international trade routes completely open and friction-free. Iran leverages its unique geological dominance over the narrow channel to offset its conventional military weakness, a strategy of asymmetric macroeconomic deterrence. By demonstrating the tactical capability to close the gate using anti-ship missiles, drone swarms, and electronic jamming, Tehran intentionally injects permanent uncertainty into global financial calculations. Tehran's true weapon is the deliberate capability to turn global market fear into a permanent structural tax on global commerce. A single kinetic incident inside this narrow corridor triggers an automated domino effect across global markets. The primary shock waves hit immediately. The price of Brent crude spikes, and the valuation of major global currencies shifts chaotically as investors react to the sudden energy constraint. This secondary impact forces international central banks to adjust interest rates upward, scrambling to combat the sudden wave of energy-driven inflation. As the energy flow slows, the physical delivery of consumer manufacturing components across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans grinds to a halt. Despite our advanced digital networks and massive terrestrial engineering, modern civilization relies on a steady flow of fossil fuels and natural gas. That prosperity is held exactly where geography, finance, and military force collide, the single, unalterable jugular vein of the world.
Forget digging for buried gold. Right now, more wealth is floating on the ocean than in all the world's vaults. South of Iran lies a geographic bottleneck so tight it dictates the price of modern life. It is a choke point. To understand how it works, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. Media coverage usually frames this area through a purely military lens, gray naval warships and surveillance drones monitoring a 30-mile expanse. But the geopolitical friction hides a colder logistical reality. This waterway acts as the primary regulator for the global supply chain, serving as the physical connection between energy reserves and industrial output. The Strait of Hormuz is not a wide-open sea. It is a strictly confined maritime corridor, consisting of a 2-mile-wide inbound channel and a 2-mile-wide outbound channel, separated by a thin buffer zone. Navigating this narrow lane are very large crude carriers, or VLCCs. Each tanker stretches the length of 3 football fields and carries up to 2 million barrels of oil. To maintain global energy, a ship must pass every 45 minutes, creating a daily flow of 20 million barrels. That equals the total daily consumption of the United States. An amount matching the entire American industrial heartbeat navigates this single coordinate. Because global markets rely on this precise, rhythmic arrival of cargo, even a 12-hour disruption halts the scheduled delivery of millions of barrels. This immediate break in the supply chain triggers instant panic in the financial exchanges that price global risk. The consequences of a halt are most acute in the manufacturing centers of Asia. Unlike the United States, the industrial giants of the Far East possess almost no domestic fossil fuel reserves. Japan relies on the Persian Gulf for over 85% of its crude imports, while South Korea draws 70% of its daily energy through this specific gate. For China, the world's primary exporter, millions of barrels move through the strait daily, powering the factories that supply the rest of the planet. If this pipeline freezes, the infrastructure of Tokyo, Seoul, and Shanghai faces immediate energy deficits. Power grids destabilize, and transport networks face fuel rationing. Because these nations manufacture the world's products, a bottleneck here raises the production and shipping costs of every vehicle and electronic device destined for Western markets. The strait acts as a direct price regulator for global consumer goods. The strategic weight of this area has recently expanded. It is now the primary maritime artery for liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Qatar uses massive, specialized cryogenic transport vessels to ship frozen natural gas from the Gulf to international markets. When European nations pivoted away from regional pipeline networks, they structurally lashed their industrial security to these seaborne shipments passing through Hormuz. This gas provides the baseline energy for winter heating and chemical manufacturing. Because LNG cannot be easily rerouted or stored without specialized infrastructure, any halt in transit threatens immediate industrial shutdowns across the Eurozone. European industrial stability is now physically dependent on the stability of this single waterway. Projecting global power does not always require an army. It can be achieved by standing guard at this singular physical door where the world's energy must pass. Controlling this 2-mile-wide needle eye allows a single actor to dictate the baseline energy costs of entire continents. So what happens when active friction hits this bottleneck? How insurance markets weaponize war risk premiums to change the cost of shipping overnight? And can alternative pipelines actually bypass this choke point?
we unlock the final economic climax in Part 2.